I know what you're thinking, and the answer is no, it's not a wig. I'll be right back. Hey there, Gracious Gang, it's Mike from thegraciousguest.org here. By the way, for those listening on just the audio of this, that probably doesn't make sense what I just did at the beginning of the show, but I am growing my hair out. This is a thing, I don't know, just something I wanted to try. I've never done it before, so I guess you can comment on that if you feel inclined. People comment about all kinds of things online, so whatever, knock yourself out if that's something you want to do. But what I'm hoping you'll actually comment on is the content of this awesome, wonderful show today, and wonderful is the right word to use. So before you do anything, though, please go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like this content, share this content far and wide, however you do that, right? All those typical ways we're used to share this kind of stuff. So this is going to be a really fun conversation here today that I'm hoping that you'll really kind of kick back and enjoy and get everything you can out of this, because this is a conversation that's I think been a long time coming. I was delighted to be able to get on the show here today. My friend and former co-worker Nick Astle. Nick is a theology teacher and campus minister at St. Joseph's Catholic Academy up in Boalsburg, Pennsylvania. It's right near State College, where Penn State's main campus is. I was really blessed to get to know Nick and to work with Nick when we brought him on to teach at that school when I had been there for a couple years, and then we taught together for 2 years. And Nick typically, when I was there, he was teaching more of the 11th and 12th graders. I was doing more with the 9th and 10th graders, and we kind of collaborated on the campus ministry stuff, and just always had so many fun conversations and just really kind of kindred spirits, I think, in a lot of ways. So I was very happy to have him on. Nick has I moved back to the area we're at now, in the Harrisburg area of Pennsylvania, a little further away from State College. That was 4 years ago, and so Nick's been up there this whole time, teaching all 4 grades now. He is recently has taken on this exciting endeavor of his own podcast, which is great. It's called Bonus Points with Mr. Astle. It's sort of an extension of his theology classes, where he can kind of go into deeper topics, and believe me, you want to subscribe, because it's a lot of fun. At one point, he was doing a Q&A and addressing the issue of what kind of dinosaur meat, if any, would be permissible to eat on Friday during Lent. So let's just be honest, that's the kind of thing that is interesting. You should go check out for sure. So Bonus Points with Mr. Astle. There's a lot of fun stuff, but very thought-provoking, very profound, and just a really, really great show to check out. So you definitely want to check that out. So look at the show notes here. I've got that for you. What I wanted to invite Nick on, though, today to talk about was just wonder and awe in general. Distinctions between those two words. Wonder, of course, is what we're all about here on The Gracious Guest, thegraciousguest.org. I'm continually attempting to ponder, explore, and unpack, anywhere where we can really kind of encounter wonder and awe in life. And I think it's important. I think it's incredibly important. I think there's so much reductionism, so much materialism, a lot of the isms that tend to reduce, hence reductionism, to reduce the human thing, the whole broad, incredible, complicated, profound human experience, the experience of living at all, living in this wonderful creation that God has created, reducing it down to basically just a math problem. Or it's just this, it's just that. This experience you had, well, that's just blah, blah, blah. I really detest that, as you all know. And I was really excited to be able to bring Nick on today to sort of see his perspective on wonder and awe. What is the connection with experiences of wonder with our faith, like how that helps to fuel his prayer life, how he interprets that within his own sort of spiritual life, and to take a closer look at some of the challenges as he sees it to experiences of wonder and awe, what tends to obstruct that desire within us to go deeper and to just kind of keep us at the surface level all the time. What is it that's doing that? What is it that's tempting us most effectively these days to avoid what we really need, these experiences of wonder and awe? So without further ado, enough from me, let's jump into this interview with Nick Astle from St. Joseph's Catholic Academy up in Boalsburg, PA, talking about wonder and awe. Let's take a look. All right, Nick Astle, welcome to the Gracious Guest Show. You are my gracious guest.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, and it's funny because I was wondering right as we were starting, I was like, should I just address him as Mr. Astle? Because that's kind of like that's becoming like a brand almost.
Yeah, and I debated that a lot. Like, it feels weird because they call me Mr. Astle, but most everybody else calls me Nick. So,
Do you ever find it awkward when like another teacher or administrator like insists on calling you Mr. Astle instead of Nick?
when it's just teachers, I feel like I'm in trouble. When like,
That's
oh,
yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Astle, it's like, oh, what did I do now? Um,
There's a couple teachers I bump into, and it's like, and like I'll even say to them, I'm like, hey, Bill, I was like, Mr. Creavey, and I'm like I just called you by your first name, like this. Okay, it's
it's a good examination of conscience for me because I immediately start thinking, what did I do? What did I do to offend
right.
them? What did I do wrong? So really instead of the pamphlets they give you before confession, I just need another teacher there to call me by my last name. And that'll be as thorough as I would ever need.
Well, and that was even, I don't know why it's so effective. It was always one of my favorite parts of the it's such a fun quotable part from The Matrix, right? Just that something about that Mr. Anderson thing is just really I don't know, it's chilling. But we're here today to talk about, wonder and awe, and it's something obviously you and I've spoken of on many occasions in different ways in the past, and I focus on I guess you could call it this theme, through a lot of different means, but because I was thinking recently about all these different, sometimes surprising places and experiences in life that I encounter wonder and awe. Just something hit me, and I was like, I'd like to have Nick on and ask him that. So that was really my first kind of major question with just like wonder and awe in general, and what makes you wonder? What sort of experiences?
So I've been thinking about that. Since I kind of knew this is what we would be talking about, and I knew you were going to ask me, where have I experienced wonder? And so for me, like the first thing that comes to mind, and I imagine you're probably the same way, the first thing that came to my mind was, when I'm at the beach, right? I love the ocean. I'm standing by the ocean. I'm wondering about, like, there's just that sense of awestruck wonder. Then the more I thought about it, I'm realizing more and more how much wonder there is just in normal everyday, even, that lesson plan that I've taught a million times. Either somebody asks a question or I think of an angle that I'd never considered, and there's just kind of that moment where I have to stop and say, let me wonder about that.
Right. Like you didn't see it coming.
Yeah, you would think by this point. I know I haven't been teaching that long. I mean, this is year 6 for me. So I still think, I've heard most of the questions that are going to come up on any given day. I think I know. When we talk about this topic, someone's going to ask this, and then this is going to be the reply.
Right.
But then there's always that one. There's always that one student, that one question that just comes so out of left field that I have to stop and think, I've never considered that before. The one that, if I can throw out an example,
Yeah, please.
one that was asked on Friday with my sophomore class, I just gave them, it was one of those days where there was a lot going on and we couldn't really do too much in the curriculum. So I said, well, some of you are getting ready for an AP test in half an hour. Study for that if you want. If not, we'll do open Q&A over here. So whatever questions you have, throw them my way. And the first question I got was, do conjoined twins have one soul or two? And I had to stop, and I thought, well, they're two people, so two souls. And they said, but if a person is a body and a soul, how does that work? Because they only have one body. I was like, can I get back to you on that one?
Yeah, let me
go think about that for a while. Let me wonder about it.
Oh my God.
But just wasn't prepared for that. Didn't see it coming. Still haven't really. I'm trying not to just immediately Google it or see what the officials say. because
You need
I
someone
really,
from the National Catholic Bioethics Center on like retainer or something. Just
yeah, I'm sure they've
like,
addressed this. It has to have come up at some point, right?
yeah, I've never.
But
Yeah,
I'm trying to make more of an intentional effort to not immediately go to Google with my questions.
right.
I'm trying to, and to take it back to wonder. I'm trying to take at least some time with questions like that to just think about it, ponder it,
Yeah.
wonder. I said I'll get back to you with a better answer. I'll shoot from the hip right now. Here's my immediate answer, but let's wonder about it. Let's
Yeah.
come back to this later.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, and that's so well. It just I have to share this too because it reminds me, and you might remember this, but I had a similar situation. A student, I forget exactly how it came about, but we were talking about, I think it was like an ethics of war and peace kind of discussion, and I hadn't said anything about, like, I hadn't set this up in any way, and this student who wasn't really known for very long drawn out, thoughtful, pensive kind of encounters just randomly like perks up for a second, and he's like, wait a minute, and I'm nervous, it's one of those things. I'm like, what's he gonna, and he said, I still to this day am blown away by this one. He said, so if a soldier lays a landmine that doesn't go off in that conflict and like kind of gets lost to history, and like 1,000 years later some kid's walking through the field and hits the landmine, triggers it, and blows up, is that soldier somehow guilty for that kid's death? And I'm like, wow. And then like it just blew my mind about like the toll of like, so for our judgment and judge, for our sins, and the what that did for me to think about the ripple effect of every one of my sins was just absolutely astonishing. And so I'm still unpacking that like 4 years later, like it has literally affected my spiritual life because of that thing that kid who sometimes didn't pay attention,
And I would bet that kid had no idea that they caused such a tectonic shift in your
Right.
your entire mental process,
Right.
your spiritual state.
Yep.
If that kid was anything like some of mine, they just it was just something they were curious about. They moved on 4 years ago, but here we are sitting here talking about it.
Yeah. You're like, yeah, Mr. Creavey's class. Like, who? Yeah, no. I'm sure he remembers the class, but probably not a whole lot that we talked about, day to day in there, of course. But oh my gosh. So you're like, anything else as far as like those? I'm curious now about the kind of day to day things, because that's obviously a classroom example. But anything else that comes to mind as far as wonder and awe and the kind of the humdrum or the mundane?
Yeah, more so wonder than awe, if we can distinguish them.
Yeah, please.
And I don't have a very well-developed, like, systematic approach here. I'll leave that to the Dominicans to come up with some sort of, like, really, really clearly defined terms. When I think wonder, I'm thinking of the desire for knowledge, right? And that's kind of the classic definition, right? I'm thinking of something that I encounter that I want to know, and I know that I don't know. And sometimes that is accompanied by awe, but not all the time. I think that sometimes I can point to experiences where I've experienced wonder that expresses itself as, maybe I'm going to make a plan. Maybe it's I have a desire for this knowledge. Here's how I can acquire this knowledge, whether it's a simple process or not. And then sometimes it is that wonder where I'm encountering something and I just need to chew on it. So this is where I try to be consistent with something like the Examine, right?
Right.
And I know I try to do it right before bed, but I'm falling asleep right before bed. So maybe I need to do it earlier in the day, but usually that's when I can go back and unpack those things that, whether they struck me or not at the time, it almost feels like, not that our brains are computers, but if I can make a computer analogy, it feels like there are those things that come up throughout the day that almost become background processes where it's like, I've moved on. I'm going through my day. I'm trying to remember, here are my lesson plans for the day. I have to email this person back. I have to do this and that. But somewhere deep in that background, something is still processing. And then later when I have that quiet moment, when I stop in the chapel, or I'm on the drive home, it comes back to the forefront, and it's richer, it's more developed. There's some fruit there that wasn't there when it first struck me. So for me, that's the kinds of questions that I get, especially the questions that are off topic. I have
Right.
like one of my senior classes this year has made a name for themselves with their off topic questions, but they're always good questions. It's never something stupid. I don't get the impression they're trying to get us off track. It's just
Right.
something that, we were talking about one thing and that made them think of this, which made them think of that. And then,
Right.
that reminded me, why is it that we do this, or what's that about? And it's just, it pops up. I couldn't have seen it coming. I couldn't have planned for it, but now
Right.
here we are, and we're going to wonder. We have a desire for knowledge.
Sure. It's like I haven't seen this in a long time, and I was actually trying to remember, but when you just how sometimes something just dawns like that. Remember in Star Trek Generations? Do you remember that?
Never saw it.
That one, oh, okay, because Data gets like his emotion chip, kind of fully installed, and he's walking along on a mission. He's just like laughing his head off, and Geordi's like, what? And he references this joke, and he's like, I get it. Is what are you talking about? He's like on the such and such mission. I forget what the mission was. He goes, you said this, and Commander Riker said that, and I get it. And he's like, Data, that was 7 years ago. And he's like, I know, I just get it now. And
Yeah.
so there is sometimes like a time release on, I think, certain experiences of like after the fact being awestruck or discovering like a deeper level of wonder, and curiosity about something that might even be a previous experience, or it gets a whole new dimension to it. So that's mysterious in and of itself.
Yeah, I like that you use that word mysterious, because
Yeah.
that I don't think you can separate the two.
Sure.
If wonder is this desire for knowledge, that implies that we're missing knowledge. Because if we knew everything, we wouldn't have to wonder.
Right.
And so there's always that element of mystery. There's that element where we know that we're not fully comprehending what is in front of us. And wonder's kind of that response to, it's that desire not just for, I forget who said it. I have a lot of good quotes, and I don't remember who said any of them. But it's
Those are some of the best.
we don't just desire to know true things. We desire truth, right?
Right.
Our quest for knowledge, our quest for understanding is never just, I want to learn a bunch of specific things, even about whether it's a lot of subject or one specific subject. It's always, behind that all, there's always that deeper quest for knowledge in general, or truth as a concept, that we're not just looking for good things or beautiful things. We're looking for the true, the good, and the beautiful. And so
Yeah.
ultimately we would say we're looking for God, right? I don't
Yeah.
I don't think it's a spoiler alert to say that's where we were going with that, is the desire I have in a given day, the wonder that I have in a given day, is a part of and a foreshadowing of the desire that I have that's ultimately fulfilled by God. And
Right.
so if we recognize that, I might be just going, you might be sitting there like, I don't know where he's going with this. If we recognize that, if we're able to step back and kind of put a name on it, I think that can be an incredibly powerful experience of prayer, is just to recognize when we are awestruck, when we have that desire for knowledge, when we're wondering about something, that if we're intentional about it, that can be a moment of prayer, of almost like I don't want to use the word contemplation in a strict, precise way, but in the broader
Right,
sense,
right.
a moment of contemplation, right? Of just
Yeah.
of being in the presence of God in this moment here.
Yeah. I heard, I hadn't really looked this up, or if I forget, I'll have to double check it, but that the etymology even of contemplation, of being just sort of in that temple sort of experience, of some kind of an experience of, otherness, that it's interesting because when you said about the transcendent nature of all of this. This yearning for this ultimate. I just had to grab my little notebook here because just the other day, I think it was Office of it was Office of Readings 2 or 3 days ago. At the time of this recording, this is what day is it? What month is it? It's May. It's currently May. So this would be, I don't know, around May, 7th or 8th or somewhere in there, that the Office of Readings was a quote from Gregory the Great. And or the second reading, there was this quote. He said, "Anyone who does not love the truth has not yet come to know it."
Ooh,
and I was just
like that.
Okay. It's like, I want to write that down. That is just...
That's a bumper sticker right there.
Well, yeah, and I there is something so profound about this. This keeps coming up, and anytime we're, discussing, or I've discussed Wonder and Awe with people, is this... I just keep... It's baffling to me that just the reality that we yearn so deeply for some kind of infinity seems so obvious, but by the same token, I just always come back to, like, based on what? Like, there was, like, no one that, not me, not you, not anyone I've ever known in my entire life, or anyone they've ever known, has ever had any experience in their life, day by day, so to speak, that is anything other than limited, measured. There's limits to it, there's boundaries, it's here and then it's gone, however long that takes. And yet there's this constant, just absolutely unavoidable, like, just natural desire and sense that there is something perfect and eternal. And that's what I want, and it's just, God, that has to be coming from somewhere that is by definition not material, because just a strictly material origin for that desire makes no sense to me.
And that
wasn't a bullet point I put down in the email to you, but take it away, because no, I'm just curious. That's
like the argument from Desire for the existence of God. I don't know. I associate it with C.S. Lewis in my head. I don't know if he's the first one to propose it or just the one who put it into words
associate with it
recently and the best. But
right,
that we all experience the desire for the infinite, and even if you can't immediately articulate why, you'd be foolish to deny it. You'd be foolish to say, nope, I'm entirely satisfied with things as they are. We all recognize we want more. We want that which is infinite. And we also see that whatever we naturally desire corresponds with a real fulfillment of that desire.
Right.
We are naturally hungry. Food exists. We naturally get tired. Sleep exists.
Right.
And so if we all have this natural desire for infinite, eternal happiness, well, then it would follow that exists, and that is what we call God. Mm-hmm. And so, if you get to that point, you can then work backwards and say, okay, so that desire for the infinite was placed there by the infinite God, who desires us to be happy with him forever. But I think if you're just starting from that desire, you can't explain where it comes from. It doesn't seem to make any sense at face value unless you're willing to be honest and follow through logically where that leads. And then if you have the wonder, if you have the desire to follow that path, only then will you be able to find what it is. You'll be able to find that not only does your desire correspond with something that is real, but that the fulfillment of that desire is accessible, infinitely transcendent, but that transcendent God has made himself accessible to us. And that really is, man, you could take that one to prayer all day, not run out of things to think about.
And I was just going to head that direction, just ask you, because the other thing the main kind of thing I had down was to just, two main things. This was the next one, was just how does this, and you mentioned this a little bit already, this kind of thinking and contemplation and experience of wonder and awe and desire to be open to that more affect your own faith, your own faith outlook, your own prayer, that kind of thing.
So I'm not good at praying. I try.
It's not just me.
I like to underline practicing Catholic, but I try to be consistent. I try to have a set time for prayer. I've done Exodus 90 a few times, and one of the requirements for that is a daily holy hour. And the first time I ever did it, was Lent 2020, which looking back, it was like, oh yeah, that one would have been so easy otherwise. But
Yeah.
I remember thinking a daily holy hour, that's ridiculous. No one can do that. But that's one of those
Fulton
things that
Sheen's going like,
really, really
like, yeah,
that
we know
busy.
you did it. We know.
Yeah. But it was video games weren't invented yet when you were around. You didn't have as much going on. But Venerable Fulton Sheen, pray for us.
Oh my goodness, absolutely.
But so for me, the first question that I asked when I started trying to make a time of prayer consistent was, what the heck am I supposed to do the whole time? Okay, rosary, that's a free 15 minutes right there. That can just block that one out.
Right.
If I really take my time with it, maybe 20, 25 minutes. And then I was, I could read this, I could say this. But what I found was that I was making prayer into a to-do list almost, or I was making it just, here's the set of devotions that I'm going to do during this prayer time. It's been calculated to tally up to an hour. There we go. And what I found is that it's certainly better than not praying at all, but it's also not, we don't go into conversations with a point-by-point bullet list of here's everything we're going to talk about. Like even this today, we have an outline, but it's not a script,
We've strayed from it a few times, and not exactly strayed from it, but it's you branch off it, in different ways when the Spirit leads.
And I think that's how good prayer is, right? You have that framework, whether that's Scripture and Lectio Divina or the Rosary or whatever it is, but you have to leave that room to just stop and wonder, and that happens for me. So two contexts I really want to mention. The first one is the Rosary. Growing up, is it not to be irreverent? Is it wrong to say I hated the Rosary? I didn't like the Rosary.
It's like I already heard you saying the sentence. Like I knew where it was going. I know, or just didn't work.
It didn't work for me. And even through high school and into college, and I remember feeling so guilty because I thought I should like this. I know that I want to be a good Catholic. I know they like the Rosary, so I want to be like them. But it just it didn't click. And then I stumbled across a couple different quotes, couple different articles. It just seemed like everywhere I turned, the Rosary was showing up, and I eventually said, okay, this is being placed in my life. This isn't just a coincidence. And so I made a commitment. The kicker was a quote from a bishop whose name I do not remember, but he said, "You cannot persist in sin and the Rosary. Either you'll give up the sin or you'll give up the Rosary." And I saw that. Yeah, it was kind of that same.
That's pretty stark. No, there it is. Yeah.
Now, of course, so I decided that day. I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to do the Rosary every day. And so just getting better at it, in the sense of finding the best way to approach it, finding the best way to meditate on the mysteries while also saying the prayers, which I find very fruitful now with a mind that can never focus. I've always got the two tracks running at a time in my mind, and so the Rosary is nice because it gives both of them something to be doing.
Right.
But I've had those moments where, you wouldn't expect it, having prayed the Rosary now for coming up on 7 years daily.
Wow.
That's, even if you're just the joyful mysteries, for example, praying those twice a week, that's how many times now? You would expect, okay, is there really anything else you can get out of those 5 specific events? But I'll have those times where there's just something that strikes me, whether it's something that struck me before or something new, a new insight, a new, we're always holding up the jewel. We're holding up the gemstone. We're always looking at it, and then occasionally we'll turn it away. We never turned it before.
Right.
Say, that's good. It's the same, but it's different at the same time. We see it in a new way. We see something we didn't see before.
Yeah.
And so I'll have those moments where I just have to stop and just pause just for a few moments, just let it sink in. It can be very elusive, though. I find that whenever I do stop and I think, all right, I'm gonna focus on this now. I'm gonna meditate on this new insight. It's gone, right?
Right.
And that sounds like St. John of the Cross describes that when he talks about the lighter forms of contemplation, how those moments can be so fleeting and so light that as soon as you turn your attention to them, they're gone like mist. They're gone like the dew in the morning.
Yeah.
But those are even if it's just that split second, those moments of wonder where you're looking at this very familiar event and you're seeing a new dimension that you never saw before. So that's one, the Rosary. The other one, I have to say, is Eucharistic adoration. I was always struck by the story. I think it was with John Vianney, St. John Vianney, who he had a parishioner who would just sit in the chapel for hours, and he asked him, "How do you pray?" And this, relatively simple, I'm assuming fairly uneducated peasant, just said, "I look at him and he looks at me." And I've also heard it put as you behold and you beheld. You behold
Beautiful.
and you allow yourself to be held. And that's that moment where you're there with the Lord. And sometimes you're talking, sometimes you're not, but you're there with him. You're in his presence. And then the one Eucharistic hymn by St. Thomas Aquinas that I've always loved, the one line in it right in the first verse there, all lost in wonder at the God thou art. And I would say more of that stanza if I could remember how it started. But it's one of those things where I can't remember the first line, so it's like I can't remember the rest of it. If I got that, I'd be good. But kind of doing word association to get ready for this. And that was one of the ones that stuck out as all lost in wonder at the God thou art. And just that beholding God and allowing ourselves to be held, and just in that moment of that moment of wonder, that moment of we've moved beyond words. We've moved beyond what we can articulate.
Well, and it's what's amazing is how it can be so, like we said before too, like the common daily things, or even a rare thing, but something in a sense on the surface of it totally secular, quote unquote, that makes you even just start to wonder, is anything really secular? Like, I was thinking when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, or like when the and I'm not the hugest football fan or anything, but or like the Red Sox win the World Series, or just something very my personal favorite, the 1980 hockey team, U.S. hockey team, just mopping the floor with the Soviets. But it's like this event where you could write a strictly reductionist explanation of it and no one would find it interesting. And I, by the way, in case I'm sure you're not surprised by this, one of my common, I constantly just really, in a kind of a mean way even sometimes, but maybe not mean, but I really take aim at reductionism on this show a lot, because I just think it's so obviously stupid and just empty and, well, and it doesn't give anyone anything at all. It doesn't even try. And so, you could explain, like, the 1980 hockey team, slightly less than a score of 20-something young men with moppy hair skate on ice and smack puck into goal and win. Like, you could write like a very robotic sort of like explanation of it that would just absolutely give you every little fact, every little detail. It could tell you what colored shirt the lady in the third row, and you could get all those facts, but it's like we just know. It's like you can't. It's like you don't even have to explain it. Like, it means something. And I think for me, like, wonder and awe always comes back to both of them, like, are dancing around this greater reality of meaning, which to me is fundamentally sacramental, you could say, even, right? This lowercase s of just everything, absolutely everything is charged with the grandeur of God, like Hopkins says. I love that Gerard Manley Hopkins quote. And so with that in mind, like this is all around us. It should be obvious. The last question I had for you is just, in sort of your take on this. What do you think, Nick, are some of maybe the main, most pernicious, maybe kind of obstacles, to the experience of wonder and awe, which again should be sort of something we're all doing, but I think we all know most of us are probably not doing it as much as we should be on a daily basis. And, what do you think we can do about that?
So paradoxically, I think that the availability of information makes it harder to wonder. And I say that it's paradoxical because we said that, the classical definition of wonder is the desire for knowledge. And so wouldn't more accessible knowledge just facilitate wonder? But if anything, it makes it more difficult because there's no room for the desire. It's
Sure.
like if I have a question about something, if I want to know even something as mundane as what's the temperature in Jerusalem right now? Like,
Right.
I can know that. And even if I told one of my ancestors 100 years ago, they would think I was nuts. Not for being able to know that, for wanting to know that. Why would you care about that?
Right.
But there's so much that's so accessible, but we use it so poorly, and that's why.
And I guess we probably aren't appreciative for it for that very reason too, or you take it for granted.
Yeah, and we don't have the time to desire the knowledge because the knowledge comes so quickly that we just move on. And at first you might think, well, that's a good thing because, the desire is being fulfilled. But it's never just about the desire. When we are wondering, yes, there is knowledge that we don't have, knowledge that we would like, but there's also something to that experience. Again, not to be like, we don't want to be reductionist. We don't want to minimize wondering to just the lack of knowledge or the presence of a desire to have knowledge. Because there's so much more that goes into that experience of wonder, especially when it's that awestruck wonder where we recognize that we don't have the words, and we start to think maybe there aren't words. Maybe this goes beyond that. And this is why I make it a point now to bring it up, because I know that it always gets pushback from students. Don't you just love those topics where that it's going to be a fight, so you bring it up for that fight?
Right, like you start the fight.
Yeah, I start the fight because I want them to have this fight. But
I don't want them to have the upper hand. Yeah. No.
yeah, how Aquinas defines curiosity as a vice. And they're always just on its face. They're like, that just confirms everything I always thought about. You anti-intellectual, like,
right.
Okay, listen, you're talking about St. Thomas Aquinas. There are many things you can call him, but anti-intellectual is not one of them. But then we dig into it more and say, well, how is he defining curiosity?
Yeah.
And it's, it's, at least for me, and I might be alone here. This might not be an everybody experience, but when he describes curiosity, it sounds a whole lot like I use my smartphone.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is it like a trite kind of trivial? Look at the popularity of trivia, and I love trivia, but
don't get me wrong, I love
meaningless.
it.
Well, right. It's completely like, What was the last soundtrack released in the '80s? Batman by Prince. Okay.
That, and that's in there.
Great.
That's up in your head now.
What? Something else could take that place. Thank you.
But so he talks about curiosity as a vice.
Yeah.
And he says that the virtue that opposes it, because every vice has its virtue, right? The virtue that opposes it is studiousness. So it's certainly not that we don't want knowledge. It's not that we don't want to use our brains. Of course not. Again, it's Aquinas saying that.
Right.
But it's opposed to curiosity, this sense of just we're seeking the shallow, the surface level. If Aquinas were around today, he would probably say that it's, the not autocorrect. When you Google some questions and it just automatically pops up the answer for you. You don't even have to click on a link.
Right. You don't have to type your question anymore. Yeah.
It's like if we search for a question and we don't get one of those answers, we don't know what to do. It's like I have to actually. How do I know what to click on? How do I do I have to read this to find the answer? Sometimes it'll highlight it for you, which is very convenient. But we are so satisfied with the easy answers sometimes that harms wonder, that hurts our desire to go deeper. Whereas, if you have to crack open a book, God forbid, or read a full web page about something, that's going to spawn more questions. That's going to, in the process of fulfilling your initial desire for knowledge, it's going to further that desire.
Right.
And ultimately that's going to increase the desire for the ultimate truth. Right. And so I think that this path of wonder that can be such an incredible, and again, I'm talking about like trying to find answers to the questions that pop into my head throughout the day as though it's a significant prayer experience. But it can be. It can't be if it's just stopping at, I Googled it and I read the first thing that popped up and that's the end of it.
Right. Yeah, just a book I was reading the other day, kind of a classical ed book, like was talking about some of the pitfalls of our use, at least, of technology. And I forget who the quote was. Again, like we should have Nick and I should have researched our quotes earlier, but there's a lot of good quotes. Trust us, they're not from us. No, but he said something to the effect of, it was just very blunt. It was like, if you have to look it up, you don't know it. And I was just like, I was thinking about that. Like, if I'm getting, like, I had surgery years back, a little like cyst thing on my scalp, and like, if the doctor's like running off to the side, I don't care if it's a book or a phone, if he's looking it up every 30 seconds, I'm like, somebody else, like you have to, there is something profound, deeper, right, about like, it becomes part of you. It's in you now, and that I think is tied up in all of this as well.
And that's something I try to impress on, especially my freshmen. So St. Joseph's freshmen take Old Testament and the New Testament. And so every week I give them a verse to memorize. Monday, the verse of the week is whatever it is. Find it, look it up, do whatever you have to do to memorize it, write it down 10 times. And then Friday, I'm going to give you a slip of paper. You tell me that verse. And they always say, why do we need to do that? I have a Bible app on my phone. Like, why do I need this? And I don't want to come off sounding anti-technology. I love technology. We are using technology right now.
Right. Yeah.
But it's one of those things where to embrace one good thing does not require us to reject another good thing in all cases.
Right.
I don't need to memorize things to have that information, but that doesn't mean there's no value in memorization. And it's like, okay, so let's say you're having a bad day. You could get out your phone and look up that one psalm that was really good for bad days, because there's so many of them, right?
Yeah.
But if you have it memorized, if it's just there, you're going to find that it's just coming to mind you're not even going to have to try. It's just going to be there. And you'll be praying before you know it, right? And you'll be praying without ceasing, because it's, like you said, it's in you now. It's something you have ownership of in a way that feels like you own it when it's in your head. You're like leasing it when it's on your phone.
Right. Yeah, sure.
It's there until it's not.
Right. Oh my gosh. Oh, well, Nick, I don't know if there's any, I mean, I can't believe that we're this far into this already. Like,
time flies.
So
right?
I'm more than open to part two and part however many after whatever topic. So you're always welcome back on the Gracious Guest Show. But thanks so much for joining us today and sharing all this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and again, thank you for having me. I'm a very grateful guest.
All right, anyway, God bless. Take care.
Talk to you later.
And what a delight indeed! So much fun. It's funny when we brought Nick on board. One of the traditions I instituted, which I didn't ask him about this, but I'm sure he misses this as much as I do, was to make our department meetings, because it was such a small school. The department was me and Nick, so we would just go to the Mexican restaurant down the street on like $2 margarita day. And basically kick off school when the bell rang, head down there, and I gotta tell you, delicious margaritas and some of the most effective planning and best meetings I've ever attended my entire life. So truly something to consider. One last thing I just want to mention. and I didn't bring this up in my discussion with him specifically, but when he was talking about the technological challenges, and we're not anti-technology here, of course. We're using this to produce this to get it to people all over the world, but there has to be balance. And I'll never forget, I've mentioned it on the show before, I'm going to mention it as sort of a sign-off thing, something of a meditation point for you, for the listener. Again, if you haven't, please subscribe, share, like this content, and bring people to the channel. Send people our way. We have a lot of great stuff coming out continually around here. Also, check out thegraciousguest.org, which is the website where you can learn a lot more, to see a broader view of the stuff I've been putting together over there. But I just want to end with this. My dad, who I just love and respect tremendously, he made a comment when I first got my first smartphone that I've never forgotten, and it was instrumental in the development of all of this, this mission, quite frankly. And there was some question came up, some trivia thing, just like Nick and I were talking about, and I immediately yanked the phone out, and I go to my little magical oracle, and I instantly find the answer. Nothing wrong with that per se, right? There are tremendous uses for that. But my dad just kind of was just blown away as this technology is emerging. And he just shook his head. He says, wow, I said, that's incredible. He's like, it's like you don't have to wonder anymore. And what's funny is, he meant it in a positive sense, in that, we have this ability at our fingertips that can do so much good. But the question is, where's the line, right? Do we want to become people who don't ever wonder? Well, obviously not, because as well the sign-off of this show, the thing I'll say to you now, the encouragement for all of you as I say, God bless you all, thank you for stopping by, is remember, don't forget to wonder. Take care.